Now, this tool, this particular round knife, has been on my wall behind me for almost a year. It's made in Germany, good steel, great feeling handle. It's a nice size, but there's a reason I haven't even used it once. And I'm going to talk about that reason a little bit further on. But before I do, where I got this from, what I think of the knife, what I like about it, before going into what I think is potentially a deal breaker for most people, depending on who you are and your capabilities. But the round knife is one of my favorite tools. If you had to pick out one knife that represented Leathercraft universally, it would probably have to be the round knife. So many people use it as their company logo if they're in Leathercraft to sell, because there's just no other tool that I can really imagine associated with Leathercraft more than the round knife. And I think it's indispensable in a serious Leathercraft workshop. Those who don't understand it tend to fear it, and that fear tends to turn into loathing. And you'll see people online going, don't use them, they're dangerous, all this kind of thing. Usually from people who have little to no experience using one, or just don't know how to use one, and the frustration and the fear of it just prevents them from using it. But there are cases where a round knife really can't be substituted with anything else, and just makes life so much easier and more accurate when you have this tool in your collection. And it's something I recommend to everyone, as long as they follow some basic safety rules, which means you won't hurt yourself. If you break these rules, you can seriously injure yourself. And it's like a lot of things in life. If you break the rules, you're going to pay the price. And the round knife is no exception to that rule. So where did I get this particular round knife from? And who's it made by? Well, some of you, especially the old timers in this sport, may recognize the Don Carlos range of round knives and various other different knives that they produce for Leathercraft and the flooring trade as well, I believe. But Don Carlos is what they used to call this, but now it's just known as the Frieder Herder ABR Söhne Solingen, Germany. Okay. So obviously I don't speak German. I don't know how any of that's pronounced, but the packet it comes in is by Precautions. Not really sure who's the brand name, but Don Carlos, Frieder Herder, or Precautions, which is since 1727, it claims. So let's go through what I like and what I don't like about this. Before we do, I'm going to go live, and that way I can take some questions as well if anyone has any questions moving forwards. And perhaps people will ask questions that you're thinking in your mind as well. So I really enjoy going live and these kind of things. So if you do want to join in lives more often, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Leathercraft Masterclass, where you can watch me do lives and upload all sorts of content. So make sure you're on there. So let's go live and we'll talk a little bit more about this blade. Where did I get this blade from? Abbey, England. That's where I got it from. So a lot of you are going to be asking where I got this from. Can you send me a link, etc. It's about 35 to 40 pounds on Abbey, England. And that's what it is. Working on piping, sewing a leather flask. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so the round knife. So before I talk too much about this particular blade, the round knife is something that I think is essential in most leather workshops. If you want to become a bit more advanced, you want to start working with thicker leathers, and you want to cut accurately in certain circumstances, I think the round knife really can't be replaced. I think it's definitely worth learning how to use one safely. And I think the safety factor of it puts a lot of people off. A lot of people think, you know, this huge blade, super sharp, pushing, all that kind of thing. If it's used incorrectly, it's extremely dangerous. If it's used correctly with a few basic safety measures like keeping your hand behind the blade, the worst you're going to do is ruin your leather if you skip across the top. So I think it's very, very safe as long as you follow some safety precautions first. So if you do get a round knife, make sure you know what those are and you practice safe usage of this tool. Okay, so just a little disclaimer there. So I got this from Abbey, England, about a year ago now, and I've had it on my wall and I've wanted to use it, but there's a bit of a deal breaker in there. What's the grinding angle of this knife? And that's an interesting question because I'm going to get into that, because that, I think, is the main deal breaker with this knife. So I'm going to go through some things I like about it. First of all, the fact that it's one of the most economical knives to buy on the market at 35 to 40 pounds, I believe it is, maybe a tad more after delivery. But the price really can't be faulted. I mean, if you look at some other options out there for round knives in this size range, even from China, you're not really going to beat that. So I'm not sure how they can make this so cheaply, because it's very well finished, it's very well machined. The primary bevel, which you can see in the light, this one here, so it's just completely flat there. This is your primary bevel. It looks like it's been done on a milling machine, so and very neatly done at that. Secondary bevel, very, very short at the end. Okay, so that is going to be the main issue and why I haven't got around to using it. The steel is supposedly high-speed steel on this. I don't know what the hardness rating is. High-speed steel, I'm going to imagine they're anywhere from 58 to 62 or something like that. That's usually the range that you see people creating knives in high-speed steel. That's kind of the hardness range, standard range that I've seen, though I'm not a knife maker. The steel seems to be good. It has a really nice brass ferrule on the top, which doesn't look, it looks like machined brass. It is probably stamped, but it looks really, really nicely made. It sits nice and flush with the blade as well. A little bit of a gap at the bottom, but that can be forgiven because it's not in an area where it really matters. There's no dirt or debris that's really going to build up and get in the way there. The handle is some kind of hardwood. It's a lighter color hardwood. Not really sure what it could be. Beech maybe, something like that. May even be hornbeam, which I know I've got some German-made chisels over there from Two Cherries, or Kirschen, I think it is. They use hornbeam. It's a similar color, so I would imagine it might be hornbeam. Very, very hard. And there's two pins in there, which I really like. On some other round knives, for example, this little one that I use quite often, I don't know how far back the base of the blade, the shaft of the blade, the words are leaving my head right now. I don't know how far back, is it the tang? Yeah, the tang. I don't know how far back it goes. So sometimes when you're really putting the pressure down, you're thinking, I hope that doesn't snap. I hope it's like at least goes halfway down. So I like being able to kind of see where this has been pinned, which is nice. Now, it looks like the tang is gone, usually full angle is near 10 degrees. Okay, I'll give you the numbers soon. Usually a full tang goes all the way to the end. So this is a partial tang, obviously. But if you go to the other side, there isn't any evidence of it at all. So it must be machined into the side, it's routed out or something, and it just slots in, and then they drill holes and then they pin it. So, I mean, as long as you're holding it this way up, nothing's going to really happen. I don't even think it matters which way up you hold it, to be honest. But it's not full tang, but at least you know where it's been pinned in. And, when you're really choking up on the blade and you're right nice and high on it, it gives you a little bit more confidence. So I do like that aspect of it. Now, coming on to the secondary bevel. The secondary bevel is 17 degrees, okay? 17 degrees. Now, to most of you, that's not going to mean much. But 17 degrees is extremely kind of steep, okay? It's a bit more like trying to drive a wedge through your leather than cutting through it. So if you think about boats, for example, if you think about a tugboat, it's not designed to go fast. It doesn't need to slip through the water very easily. It just pulls heavy objects at a slow speed, and the front of the tug is pretty much like that, okay? So it's like a blunt object almost. But a speedboat that needs to go through the water quickly and efficiently has a more acute angle to the hull, okay? So it can slip through. And it's very similar to a blade. Even if the edge is only 1 atom thick, if it's out here, it's trying to displace too much leather too early, and the leather is pushing back with equal force, and you're going to find yourself stuck driving through any kind of thick leather, which is the entire point of having a blade like this. You're not using this to cut through 0.6 millimeter goat skin for fine wallets. This is an instrument for thicker leather projects. For example, I put out a project here. This is a trunk handle, okay? The leather on this is, I don't know if you can see how thick that is. That's just over 12 millimeters, so we're looking at 1/2 inch, okay? That's the kind of area that you're going to be using this, and saddlery as well. So if you're using thicker leather in projects, and you want to trim nice and accurately, even rolled handles, for example, on a jig, you know, you're rocking the round knife forwards and it gives it a nice clean edge. You want something that tapers very gradually, okay? Now, for that, I used this, and even though it's a small one, 125 millimeters, it cut through that like butter. So you'll see in the video course on trunk handle making, me using this round knife to cut around all those curves, not effortlessly, not like butter. You know, you need a little bit of push through it, but it goes through it extremely well. And a larger one probably would have come in handy, to be honest with you. But 17 degrees is like driving a tugboat through your leather. What am I going to do about this? 17 degrees, it's too steep. What am I going to do about it? So just to give you an example, I just made these two here. So they are both extremely pointed, okay? In fact, this still takes hairs off the back. So you would think, oh, that's super sharp, that should go through leather. And that's going to throw a lot of people off, because they'll test the sharpness and think, wow, that's amazing, and then wonder why it doesn't cut through. So this is when an angle nearer 17 degrees, okay? And this is an angle nearer 10 degrees, okay, which is probably what I would prefer this round knife to be closer to. So this one here, even though it's just say it's an atom thick at the top, it's not going to go through leather because it's trying to push leather aside too quickly, too soon. Whereas this one is a more gradual taper, and it will go through like butter. So thick piece of leather here. If I take this, I think this is, it's an offcut from that course actually. There you go, that's in shot. If I push through, I can, with a lot of force, and I can feel that in my pectoral muscle, okay? Don't try this at home until it's done right. And this is just my little small one, and it just slides through reasonably simply. Okay, I don't know if you could visually see the difference there, but one's a struggle and one's not, yet they both can pop hairs. Okay, so they both have a really, really fine edge, but one is just trying to push the leather aside way, way too quickly. Do the leather tools, round knife, hole punch, etc., have to match the side of my hand? I'm sure you mean the size of your hand. I was just thinking, the side of your hand. Do they have to match the size of your hand? I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. If you've got big hands, you can always wrap leather around this handle, which I've seen before, some thin veg tan, almost like a tennis racket. And it will give you more grip, and it will also give you a bit more substance in the hand, a bit more meat in the hand. If it's too large, I can't even imagine that being too large for anybody. I mean, it's smaller than your average chef's knife's handle, and most people can use those just fine. So I would say the answer is no. I mean, if you have something that matches your hand's dimensions exactly, then that's great, but I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for you. Okay, so the best way to sharpen it, someone asks. The best way to sharpen a round knife, first of all, can't be done necessarily in a live without everything set up. That's something that I'm going to have to do on this at some point, and for which I'm going to make a video about. But I can't just tell you and then you run off and do it, because a lot will get lost in translation without actually seeing what I'm doing. So what I'm going to have to do is increase the size of that secondary bevel right on the edge there, okay? So instead of being like this, I'm gonna have to grind it down and bring it down to here. So I'm doing very little, if at all, barely touching the actual very edge. The dimensions of the blade shouldn't change at all. I'm just bringing down that wedge into something that slips through a lot easier. Size, let's have a look. Don't know if I have imperial. Yeah, I do have an imperial ruler. Let's just use that then, shall we? What size is this? 6 inches exactly, which converts into just over 150 millimeters for those of you who deal in metric. So one of the great things that I love about a round knife, and something that I use it quite often for, and I don't see a lot of people doing this to be fair, is trimming up projects. So if you've got a lining and you've glued it onto your exterior, for example, on a wallet, and then you need to trim around that lining to get the external to the same dimensions as the internal lining. You can do it in a number of ways. You can place a ruler down and then you can cut it. You can use scissors. I love using a round knife for that. It's one of the joys of using a round knife, and it's where I use this one here, which is smaller and I think better suited overall to fine leathercraft. And you can see the handle's a little bit smaller. It's fully round, it's ebony. This I bought off AliExpress. This is about 60 or 70 pounds, I think. So it's not cheap, but it comes ridiculously skiving sharp, and literally skiving sharp. High-speed steel. If you put in high-speed steel round knife and just look for this design, you should find it on there. So unfortunately, I can't give you guys a link, but I really love it for trimming up. An example would be, I might as well use this. This is from the latest course. So this is a project that I'm working on at the moment, how to install locks and rivets. And it's part of a larger course which focuses on how to make a top frame bag, like a doctor's bag, for example. On the other side, you'll see in order to get this Bombay effect, or the rounding effect, okay, so you can see it's raised in certain areas to give a different effect, a different look. You have to use oversized leather, okay, because the leather has more surface area to go around, so you need an excess. So if I flip this around, you can see here that I've got some trimming to do all the way around. Now I can use a number of different things, but I absolutely love using a round knife for this purpose. Now, it's going to be done in the next course, but essentially it's going along and it's just following that curve around. And where it starts to get really curved, you can bring it right back onto its point and you can almost change direction on a short curve, real abrupt. If it's a longer curve, you can bring it further down and you can still turn. And if it's a straight and you want to keep a nice, perfectly straight length, for example, let's remove this. For example, on the top or on the bottom, I would actually lift this up, and that way you've got more blade in the cut, so it's more difficult to veer off one side or the other. Whereas if you bring it back onto here, it's very difficult to actually, well, not very difficult, but it's more difficult to keep it straight. So as you're going onto a straight, you rock it forward and push. As you come up to a corner, you bring it back, almost like you're bringing the handle down, and you can swivel very, very easily. And that's one of the great things about this knife. Do I have a course for leather engraving or carving using a swivel tool? I do not, unfortunately. I believe there are people out there who do it. I think you can get YouTube videos, but the Western or American style, traditional style of leathercraft is not something I have experience in, unfortunately, so it wouldn't be something I could teach. Tamara, hello, how are you, Mr. de Havilland travel bags? How many de Havilland travel bags have you made so far? I would love to know. Do you scissor with yours? Do I scissor with mine? Do I use scissors in leathercraft? Absolutely. I do use scissors in leathercraft. I have quite a few different ones. Sorry, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's probably half a dozen other ones. I do love using scissors, horses for courses, some that I'll use on leather, some for patterns, some for reinforcements, some for material, canvas and things like that, etc. Do I scissor with my round knife by rocking it? Do I rock chop? Yeah, talking of de Havilland travel bag, the video course, the de Havilland travel bag, if you notice that course, I'm actually rocking as I pull the handle through. So I rock chop in that sense. If I was to do it on here, I'm very careful because this knife isn't great for that. It doesn't want to do it, no. But another one would, yes. Yes, I do. Sometimes I'll keep it static and pull something through. Sometimes I'll rock through. And then sometimes I will push through. So those are your main 3 types of cuts outside of skiving, obviously, that you can do with the round knife. So that's kind of, if you had to have one tool, that would probably be it. Do you use primarily veg tan? No, I would say probably around 50-50, maybe slightly more biased to veg tan. I'm not one of these people that thinks veg tan is superior. I think vegetable tan leather works very well in certain projects and not in others, and I think chrome tan works well in certain projects and not others. So I like to use the right leather with the right project, depending on what it is. For a lot of bags, for main panels, for a small bag like this one here, this is veg tan goat. But for large bags, I actually enjoy the extra kind of durability that chrome tan leather brings. It's a lot more scratch resistant, abrasion resistant, depending on the external finishes and how it's tanned. But generally it's a little harder wearing. It doesn't age as nicely, but it's harder wearing, higher tensile strength. So I look for the main panels on a bag. I really enjoy using chrome tan leather. But for things like handles and certain attachments where it's nice to have something that molds the dimensions of your hand, I really enjoy using vegetable tan leather on that as well. But it depends on if I'm going to make a more traditional case, then I'm going to use the right leather. I'm going to use veg tan, probably English bridle leather. So it really depends on the style of bag as well. I think time to use some Alran. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, it's they're one of the most respected to produce goat skins in France. I also enjoy using Italian tanneries as well. There's a lot of really great goat skins coming from Italy as well. But yeah, you can't go wrong with Alran. How do you sharpen the blade? Sharpening a round knife, I mean, I would have to be properly set up with everything on my table to show you. I couldn't speak it to you and you understand and go away and you know exactly what to do, because you have to think about safety as well. And one thing, if you're sharpening a round knife, hold on 1 second. Don't even think about doing it without using a pair of these, which are cut resistant gloves. Okay, not cut proof, cut resistant. These are by Scan, S-C-A-N. They are cut resistant 5, which I believe is the highest resistance. I think they're made with a polymer, some kind of UHMWPE. What's that one now? Ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. There you go. So it's stronger than Kevlar. But stick a pair of these on. You don't really lose much dexterity using them. I'm not going to give you a demonstration because I just trust that they work. But it's the kind of thing I use these when I'm changing the blade on the round knife, for example, or if on the bell knife skiving machine, or if I need to go in there, something's clogged, something's dislodged, or I need to change over the feed roller or something, take off the front assembly. I don't put my hands anywhere near anything bladed like that without putting these on first. Sharpening tools, I'll let them get wet with my hands. It's absolutely fine, makes no difference. They're not very thick, but the cut resistance on them is extremely high. They're also very abrasion resistant. I've been using these for quite some time. You sharpen a round knife, you stick a pair of those on. It cost me about £7, 10 bucks to save your fingers, which you work with. And if you're like me and you use your hands to earn a living, then, you know, you've only got so many fingers. Keep them. I really enjoy seeing your videos. Thank you very much. You're very welcome, very welcome. But yeah, so my goal is to make a YouTube video where I'm going to reprofile this, but I think most people wouldn't want to watch a video about how to reprofile a round knife. Most people aren't going to be interested, but I think what I'm going to do is actually blunt this against a stone or a diamond plate or something like that. So I will have to sharpen it at the same time. So it kind of gives you a tutorial about both of them. And I'll make it a YouTube video. Maybe I'll shave my beard off with it or something. We'll see how sharp we can get it. But yeah, this is a really, really good size. Again, I got it from Abbey, England, Abbey, England. If you want to buy one, you have to make a trade account, which is not too difficult to do. But just, I can't guarantee that you're going to get one of these with the right edge geometry. I think it looks like it's done on a machine, set at the factory. You know, it's, I don't think this is something that's going to be very usable for most people. What is your website, please? I'd like to learn more about your class. Absolutely. Leathercraftmasterclass.com. Or you can go to my bio on Instagram here and you can click on my link at the top and then you can learn more about the courses. And while you're there, and this goes for everybody, don't forget to get your free leather guide and tool buyer's guide, okay? I believe I even have a link in there, don't hold me to this, for this knife. This is the Chinese one, which is exceptional quality, I have to say. If you don't have the link, just message me and I'll send it to you. But yeah, don't forget to get the free tool buyer's guide and also the guide that teaches you what to look out for when you're buying leather. So if you can get samples from your tannery, I teach you exactly how to test your samples using various techniques so that you can make sure that the leather you're getting is good quality. And the tool buyer's guide obviously takes into account whether or not you're a beginner, you're a bit more advanced, or you've got the experience so you know which tools you need at various stages. I have a round knife, the same I bought off eBay, where the bevel is too wide. It is a problem. How do you feel? Long time no see. I'm constantly let down by bridal leather suppliers. Never found a supplier whose offerings are out of this world. Any suggestions? Not anymore. There's not. I don't rate many that are left. This is the tough thing. There's so many that have closed down, and over the years I've bought leather from tanneries that no longer exist, and it's the best leather. But nowadays, you know, you got bakers. I think are probably going to be about your best at the moment, but they are also really expensive. But they're good at the same time. So I would say bakers, but I would also look at some other offerings from Italian suppliers as well. They don't call it necessarily bridal leather, but you can tell by the way it's got that polished wax finish on the top that it's filled with fats and greases in much the same way. I've had some samples from them and so far they seem very good. What was another option that I was going to say? Oh, it's completely blanked now. This is a great thing about lives. You have one thing in your mind and then all of a sudden it's gone. But yeah, I would probably take a look at even Buy Leather Online, which is a company that I promote mainly because it's just easy to buy from. As soon as I find a better company, I'll send you that one. But yeah, take a look at Buy Leather Online and ask them for some samples on it. But yeah, that's what I was going to say. Even now, Dunhill, and I know Simpsons as well, but they're gone now. But Dunhill don't use English bridal leather from the UK anymore. As far as I'm aware, they're getting it from Belgium. I have a thought that it might be Tannerie Mazure in Belgium, because I know they specialize in a lot of finishes on vegetable tan leather. So even like Dunhill, which is like the apex predator in English leather goods, traditional cases and things like that, even they're moving to Belgium because the UK just isn't anywhere near what it used to be. for tools, for leather, for so many things now, and it's a real shame. Yeah, but don't get me started on English bridle leather from England anymore. Greetings from Malaysia, hello from Spain, hi from Greece. Cool, yeah, so any more questions about this? It was just kind of like an impromptu live. I just wanted to talk about this because this has been stuck on my wall behind me for like almost a year now, and I haven't ever used it in the courses or any lives. And a couple of people are like, oh, I've noticed you got that knife from Abbey, England, what do you think of it? And I'm like, it's excellent except for that secondary bevel on the edge. It's too much of a wedge, requires too much force, and anytime you're using virtually any knife, but especially a round knife, with extra force than you need to, more pressure than you need to, you've got an increased chance of slipping, of, you know, mainly slipping, and that's the main thing, and cutting into your fingers. I mean, if I was to slip pushing a lot of force into this, it would be the fingers I had. My nickname would be Stubby for the rest of my life if I tried doing that with this knife. Is, you know, even though best practice is to hold something here and push forwards, or alternatively get a block of wood and clamp it, or just use a clamp. Let me just give you an example, because I know some of you might be going out and buying a round knife, and I don't want anybody to, excuse a better word, dick around with it and injure themselves. So let me just cut a piece of leather here. I mean, I'm going to have to use a lot of force to do this. Okay, so sometimes if you were to cut something like this, I can't put my hand behind it because that's where the blade needs to be. So I've got nothing to hold on, so I have to hold on to the side of it. But the amount of force it's going to need, it's going to start pushing it and the cut's going to go the other way. So just butt it up to something immovable. Okay, make sure you won't slip on it. I like to use just a block of wood a lot of the time. And then start on your mark and then push through. Okay, so it is cutting, but as you can probably tell, I'm shaking quite a bit. And it cuts through. That's the only real safe way to cut with something like this, is have something that it butts up to. Your fingers are on the side, not in the direction of the cut, okay? The safest is to put them behind, because then there's literally nothing. But as long as you keep your fingers away from the blade, 1 to 2 inches away from the blade, and the direction is in a different direction to where your fingers are, that's where you can maintain safety, okay? Be very, very careful with the round knife. If you don't break those rules, you'll be absolutely fine. You're not going to be cutting yourself. You might accidentally slip and cut through leather if you're inexperienced, but with experience, the round knife is a fantastic tool. All right, sorry, just missed a question there. What do you primarily use the round knife for? Cutting through thicker leather accurately, that's the main thing. I mean, I showed this earlier. This is a trunk handle, as you can see. So it's the thickness wise, we're looking at around just over 12 millimeters, about ½ an inch. So cutting accurately along here on the heel of the blade, on the sharp point, it was reasonably easy. Okay, not with this one, it's with my other one. Cutting round the ends and things like that. It's going to be very, very difficult to do with, you know, your average knife like this, for example, which is a pattern knife, clicking knife or English shoemaker's knife, Japanese leather knife. It's going to be very, very difficult to do, to cut those curves accurately through thick leather. So in saddlery, it's very, very popular because they're always working with thick veg tan leather, or mostly working with thick veg tan leather. So it makes sense to do that. Thinning straps as well. It's very, very easy with the round knife. So if you have the end of a strap or a belt, you can just thin the end to taper it if you're doing an overlap, for example. It's a lot easier to cut through in one go. You can literally just, you know, cutting through thick bridle leather, you just start from here, press down and roll, and it cuts through in one go. And you get a really, really nice clean cut as well. To cut out a pattern, do I use a round knife or something else? For cutting out patterns, no. One thing I do is if I'm, naturally, yes. It really depends. If I'm making patterns for say a course or something, most of the time I'm using, excuse me a second, something like this, which is craft card, okay? It's kind of like single-use pattern making, really. If I'm going to be making something that I'm going to be doing lots of, then I'm using things like 2mm grey board. And to cut that, a lot of the time, I will actually use a round knife. It's very, very good at going through thick, heavy card, 2 to 3mm. So yeah, I guess if I'm using a pattern that I need to last longer, a round knife is actually the only tool that can go through, at least with any ease. Hi, Phil says, Robbie, I always cut too deep into my table using a round knife. Yeah, it depends. If you're using the green cutting mat, forget it. It's not really. It's also too grabby. If you try and push through, it grabs so hard that you have to put more pressure on, which makes you cut through further and just compounds the issue. So if you're using a green cutting mat, that can be an issue. I've seen companies use just straight MDF, and I've done that before. MDF table, a bit of a sacrificial table, but it works very, very well. Or even a solid wood table. I use acetal, POM-C, POM-C, which is an extremely high hardness plastic. So there's very, very low resistance on this. So when I'm pushing through, what's it called now? Something, the slippery coefficient. It's not that. Not abrasion. It'll come to me in a minute. But it's very low friction coefficient. There you go. So it's easy to push through. So it's my favorite surface. I do have a video on YouTube about this, by the way, about this particular table, and also Instagram TV. So if you're interested in buying it, it's not easy to buy. It's not exactly cheap, but after about a year of using it, just give it a light sanding and it's like having a brand new sheet again. So it's made a big difference. Hi Phil, come on England. Can you please advise where to get a good briefcase lock, brass, no Abbey please? You don't like Abbey England locks? I think they're pretty good for locks. Some of them require a little bit of finishing yourself. But it depends. I mean, there's some companies, like Abbas used to sell gold-plated brass locks and stuff like that. It's one of those things that I think really for English locks, English-style locks, Abbey England is the #1 company, but their consistency can sometimes be off. So it's always best to ask them, or what I do sometimes when purchasing from them is send them a message saying, can you check it for imperfections? This is what I consider undesirable. And then they'll send it out to you. Or if you get in contact with them first as well. I've done that before, and then the products that I get are good. Hi from Ibiza, Spain. Do I recommend Abbey? Yeah, I mean, for leather, no, I think they're overpriced. For obscure tools, for getting hold of tools that are no longer available from anywhere else, I think they're really good. Sometimes you can absolutely get some really good bargains. I know this one here, I've bought this quite a few years ago now. It was about £4. I added the leather wrap myself, just a quick and dirty leather wrap, but it's never come off. But this was about £4. I think it's still like £5 or £6, but everywhere else it's considerably more money. So for little things like that, what else have I got from Abbey? Just old style English tools, so a new old stock, like this adjustable crease, which I really like. Shoemaker's knife from Barnsley, a lot of different Barnsley tools. They're really good. But for leather and, mainly leather, I think they're a little overpriced. Do I make my own paring knives? Yes. I'll show you. So these are some of the paring knives I make. So this is an English style paring knife. Has a little bit more of a steeper angle, I guess you could say, less acute. So it's just a goatskin wrap on there. So that is a high-speed steel one. This is another one. This is actually, I'm sure I'm not the first person to make it, but this is an English German hybrid. So it's an English style, but it has a belly to it. which means you can go away from the edge without the ends nicking it. So you can actually thin leather down effectively with that. And that's another one that I created, again from High Speed Steel, and that's got ostrich skin wrap to it. This is another one. This is a little detail skiving knife. This is a pull skiving knife, so this is in lizard and is flexible. As you can see, it bends very, very nicely. Very, very sharp. So that's just for detailed stuff. But yeah, I enjoy making my own knives. At least I'm getting exactly what I want. Whatever happened to Dixon Tools? Did they just lose interest or bankruptcy? Can you find their stitching punches still? Only second hand on certain websites like eBay. Occasionally you see things coming up, but not always the best examples. Whatever happened to them? From what I found there, and this could be absolute rubbish, but if you go online, I think there was a lawsuit between an employee that they were trying to get rid of or something like that. There was some kind of complication, and everything went south after that. So there was some kind of mishap. They tried to get rid of somebody they couldn't get rid of, or some kind of argument. I don't know. I really don't have the answers. I think it was about 2003 or something like that it went out. But I mean, did they lose interest? I don't know. But I actually have. Apparently the guy I bought this from was from Bowstock, which used to be an online company. I think they're gone now, but I know the guy. I know him on eBay, so I bought some stuff from him before. And he said the last 2 hammers from the factory, he kept one and he sold one, and he sold it to me. I'll show it to you. I'll show you, and then I'll show you one that's a lot older. So this is an older one here. This is a Dixon Tool. Sorry for those who are really not interested in this, but I find this fascinating. And apparently someone else does too, so I'm using the opportunity. Indulge me. So this is one that I've dated from around the 1800s. This is a T. Dixon, okay, which went on to be J. Dixon and Sons. So this is a T. Dixon. The metal on here is extremely hard. Oh, it's so hard, it's in a couple of places it's shattered, but it's so hard that I can actually use it on stainless steel rivets to polish the ends, and it doesn't have any effect on the end of the hammer. So really, really hard steel on this one. High quality knife. Again, I mean, at the latest, early 1900s, but I reckon 1800s on this one. This was one of the last ones to leave the factory. So that's the kind of difference between them. The quality on this is just much higher because the steel actually blends into the wooden shaft, which is really interesting. On this one, it's just kind of stuck on. They've taken a regular hammer handle and just trimmed the sides and stuck it on there. But the steel on the end of that hammer is so soft. You virtually hit anything with it and it bends. That might be better for applying tacks. It gives a bit more grip, but it wears out a lot faster. But I just thought that's an interesting comparison, you know, with about 100 years between them of Dixon. Of course, this one has josephdixon.co.uk written on the side of it, which I don't like too much. And that website obviously doesn't exist. That's a beauty. Yeah, it's really nice. Looks like a cast hammer though. So that's crazy hard. Yeah, it's ridiculously hard, maybe even too hard. Well, one of the decades in its life, somebody's chipped the end of it, so I had to repair it. But anyway, before I digress too much away, that's basically it, guys. I just wanted to come on here and just kind of share my experiences with this round knife here. I really, really, really want to love it, and I can't wait to use it, but of course it needs some work done to it first in order to make it usable. And don't forget, for those of you who subscribe to the Leathercraft Masterclass courses, I've just released a course on how to install locks and rivets. So if you guys want to learn how to install a lock onto your bag, for which this will eventually become, the latest course will explain how to do that, but also how to install rivets. So these are decorative rivets, so they are polished on both sides. And that's something that's very important in fine leathercraft. rather than just doming it with a hammer and then leaving it. They need to be done decoratively because, of course, this is a detail that's going to be seen. So the latest course is all about that, teaching you how to do that. And then it will move on to being how to create a top frame case. Okay, so a small bag that will teach you the techniques that you could use on a much larger, say a doctor's bag or a top frame bag. So thank you very much, Phil, says Ravens Rock Leather. You're very welcome, guys. And don't forget, if you're new to the Leathercraft Masterclass, I know a lot of you have heard this before, don't forget to check out leathercraftmasterclass.com. Get your free leather and tool guide, which will basically break down exactly how to buy leather, how to select your own leathers, and also what tools you'll need to get started. One last question. Are you using the metal frame we learned with that bag? Yes, I am. Where is it? Let me go and get it for you and I'll show you. 1 second. Give me 1 second. So for those of you who didn't quite get what the question was, this is the last course. The last couple of courses were teaching you how to make the post handle, which is this handle here, okay, which is obviously flexible, it moves around. Teaching you how to make that, but also how to make your own frame. And of course, what goes onto the side of the frame, I'll use the one that doesn't have a lock into it. Side of this bag, okay? Obviously, there's a base, there's gussets, there's going to be a lot of flexing going on, and it molds into a specific shape, but that's essentially it. So yes, you are in fact correct. This frame will be getting attached to those two panels. Also, we'll be going into gusset creation and creating the bag base, the interior, and things like that. Thanks very much, Philip. You're very welcome. So again, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you coming in on this. If you have any questions about the round knife, feel free. I feel like that I've pretty much answered most of them. But if you do want to buy it, you can go to Abbey, England to buy it. But just be aware, there's a high likelihood you're going to have to do some work on that round knife in order to make it usable. And I know how to do it and I've still put it off for a year. That's a bit annoying, but anyway, there we go. So thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll see you again very, very soon. See you next time.